Good evening, everyone. The Ranter is back after spending a week under the weather, but now is more or less all better and about ready to get back into what he does. Now, since my more or less absence, things have gone by, and once again, so many things to actually go into in one particular video, so this will be one of those times where I do multiples. So, what to get into with this? I actually want to start with talking to the Democrats here. On my side of the aisle, my presidential candidates from the Democrat side, reason why I want to start with this is last Friday I was watching Real Time with Bill Maher, which I more or less do. I enjoy the show, I enjoy the humor, I do enjoy the commentary. I don't usually reference him or anything that he much says because, despite the fact that I find him funny, and some of his points I agree with, however, he also comes off with too much of this arrogant elitism from his point of view. And certain stances, especially his religious or non-religious stances, also chafe me a little bit, especially when he goes out of his way to goes out of his way on disparaging Islam, whether real or imagined. I think it's kind of real that when he does that. But be that as it may, during his new rules, the last segment in his ending monologue on it, he actually said something that was pretty prevalent for my side of the aisle. Is that to paraphrase it, if you're going to try to use your platform as running for president, but you're going far left on that platform, you're not going to get support in the middle as much as you think. And just because it's Donald Trump who was president, and now how unpopular he is, and how batshit he is, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to pick up people because you're going far left on the spectrum on certain issues. The reason why I'm kind of bringing this up now and why this is the first part of it is because of Beto O'Rourke stepping out of the race. Now, for my opinion, this is actually good. It's good for him to step out. Reason being is that it's not necessarily that I don't like him as a candidate and I don't think that he has a future. I think he's one of these candidates that does have a viable future to run again at some point. He is young, and he does draw a crowd. My problem, and it's something that I noticed in the past few months since the shooting in El Paso, that Beto O'Rourke took that to heart. And it's understandable why he did, because El Paso is actually like his hometown. And it comes home to you when a tragedy like this happens where you live, where your family lives. So I think he went off the rails. Understandable, but very unfortunate. For his stance at the debate, saying that he's gonna, oh hell yeah, we're gonna go and get your AR-15s and AK-47s. Okay, that's a great tagline. That's a great applause line for like-minded people. But without the nuance, with him just saying, "Oh yeah, we're gonna go door to door. We're just gonna make this a law, and they're gonna have to do this." Outside of drawing, obviously, the melodramatic responses that some people, "Oh yeah, I'll have my gun waiting for you." Oh yeah, attempted murder jokes. Yeah, we won't question your thinking there. But that aside, the problem with that is that there are vastly more people who are responsible gun owners who could own an AR-15, who, if they do own an AK, went through the rigorous testings and profiling because this particular classification of a gun is highly stringently watched by the ATF. One of my friends was telling me about that. This is like these are not things that you can buy like over the counter at a store, that you really need to have like all of your credentials on set if you're going to get an AK, and they will want to know where this weapon is after you purchase it. So people who go through that and are responsible gun owners who again take the gun out to the range, take the gun out hunting, defend their families if needs be, they should not be needed to check their gun, because if they haven't done anything, they're not going to do anything. The gun issue, like many other issues that we are dealing with, is a Pandora's box, and it's open, and it's very difficult to find out what a good solution is, especially when whatever solutions you want to do, the Natural Rifle Association and their lobbyists with certain political parties in our country, or one political party mostly, will do what it takes to sabotage whatever solutions they have. Because if you've not been paying attention, every one of these gun attacks, one of these mass shootings, gun sales go up. People go and buy them. Fear is good for business, right? So that's why I put a crowbar separation in my thinking to gun owners and the NRA. The NRA is not really in the business for supporting gun owners, no matter how much they claim otherwise. They are for gun sellers. They are low-rent arms dealers. And they want business to keep booming, figuratively and literally. But let's not try to penalize responsible gun owners who will not have the thought pass through their minds to take the gun out irresponsibly. So there's that at the start of Beto's decline here. The next part, of course, is when he wants to eliminate the tax benefits for churches because of their long centuries old dogma about homosexuality. You know, it comes down to a simple thing. People who do not want church to enter schools, interfere with that, should at the same time do not want people interfering with church. What happens in church within their walls for their belief system is for them in the church. It should not be something that should be questioned here. And this is not. I have my own issues when it comes to certain churches, certain like mega churches. I do not believe the pulpit is the place for politics. And like the late great George Carlin said in his "What Am I Doing in New Jersey" HBO special, when these church people are using their churches to perpetuate their politics, like actual temporal politics, and using their pulpit to garner political support for whatever candidate is supporting them, yeah, that's when I think that particular church should, if they wants to join in the political reindeer games, they pay their admission and then they pay the tax. Putting out signs that are politically biased or politically slanted is unnecessary, right? And in reality, depending upon your belief system, I tend to believe that Jesus Christ doesn't really care about American politics as much as any other political function of our world, as long as we are good people. That we build our place in heaven through our good deeds and our thoughtfulness. See what really matters as opposed to what matters in your time of outrage because voting time is here. But Beto was pushing something that, again, is pushing too far to the left. And it's you're not going to push a 2019 woke thinking in a dogmatic system of religious belief. Now, if you want to have the debate with people on what they believe in that clashes with today's society, when they come out of the church and these are regular people, and if they decide to, they try to push their belief on that, then yeah, you can challenge them. You can challenge them. You can have a responsible, respectful debate with them on, what their stance is on homosexuality or transgender, and why they want to push one thing or don't want to push another thing, or they just, or however they want to have this proclaim their stance. But when it's outside the church, then it's just people and people, and you can just debate each other, but you don't go and try to change church doctrine over politics. It's just like, once again, you don't want churches in people's schools. You don't want them to like barge into someone's science class and say that evolution is a lie or something. Then you give them the respect that you want them to respect you with. Within the walls of their church, within the pages of their Bible that they're going to read, the sermons that they're going to preach, leave them alone with that. That aside. But Beto is pretty much the latest thing in this. As it goes back to the what Bill Maher said, is that, the only people that you're going to attract with far left policies are people on the far left. And despite how unpopular Donald Trump is, there's still a gulf of distance between far left and middle America, as well as to the far right. So it is about capturing the middle. You're not going to get people to appeal to think positively on the far left when they're too skittish of what's happening over here with Trump. I mean, that's a cold water splash in the face to go from wherever that is, instead of being in the middle where the compromise exists. You go right over here. One of the examples of this is the ongoing back and forth on healthcare, from what people want to do from Medicare for all to what they don't want to do, or what they don't seem to want to discuss how they're going to do it, how they're going to pay for Medicare for all, and what will happen to people who are actually on the Affordable Care Act, if they're on Obamacare. There's plenty of people, because of the inner workings of what Obamacare had to go through in order to exist, having been sabotaged many times by when Republicans took back over, and so many little intricate things of them trying to eliminate this, so making things are not viable, so therefore people cannot get into it. And plus, there were plenty of flaws at the start that no one had the will to fix. They wanted it broken so they can point to it and say, look, that's broken. No one wants to go and fix something that they were diametrically opposed to, especially not those people who had lobbying money from pharmaceutical companies and insurance companies. But the thing is, for those that it does work for, some of these proposals, especially Elizabeth Warren's, is that still kind of hazy. That proposal could lead to a total cut from those people who have insurance now because of the Affordable Care Act, into whatever this pie in the sky thing is that they want to do with Medicare for all. Now, again, I've said this a few times. The one person that came up with his version of Medicare for all and was honest about it was Bernie Sanders. You got to respect that. When they ask, is it going to raise taxes? And he goes, yeah, it's going to raise taxes. But the thing is that it will raise your tax for that. At the same time, the payment at the actual doctor's office will go down. So that is an actual responsible trade-off. But I don't know what it is. Maybe people are just so skittish at the idea that they're going to pay more in taxes. No matter what it is, no matter what the issue is, that the tax goes up for whatever reason, and well, we just can't handle that. But you know, once you get over that fear hump, and you go to the doctors and you realize the bill is not what it was beforehand, that you're going to be able to pay for what you couldn't be able to pay for before, then perhaps it will turn over for people's minds. There's a lot of things, over the years, the many years of what we've seen in the taxes, where if something gets introduced and people were going, no, no, we can't possibly do that, and that's too much. I don't want to be able to pay. I don't want to pay for that for something else or that through my taxes. But then they do, and then that tax money gets put to good use. That maybe benefits them, maybe it doesn't really benefit them, but benefits someone else, and you get used to it. Then whatever fear was there at the time is no longer there, and is no longer much of an issue. Now it just becomes this, dramatic every 4 years, every election period, talking about taxes. We got to lower this tax. We got to lower that tax. Okay, but that's an example of you taking something way too far to the left, where you're not going to get people coming in droves for. And there's a few advantages that the Democrats have in this. One being Donald Trump. I've said this multiple times. This is the Democrats' race to lose, because he is not some massive genius over here. But there are people that are just tired. I don't want to get tired of being scared from one angle for another angle. People are clearly tired of the news. All the melodramas and megadramas that politicians, him, Democrats, Democratic congressmen, media pundits from one angle to another, and all the batshitness. People want the normalcy that they miss. And that's in the middle. That's your centrists. That's your moderates. That's the people that understand the concept of compromise. You get this? You get this? Come together, move forward. Instead, we can't go back. I said this before. We can't go back to the way things were, because we always progress. We never regress. So, what can come better after the age of Trump has to come from after the age of Trump. You can't think of going backwards. Which is one of the reasons why Joe Biden, I guess he's getting the nostalgia vote because of his connection to Obama. But his time has passed. And if he becomes a nominee, I'll support him to the death like I would anybody else. But I recognize that his last time he could have done this was 2016. He had a very good reason why he did. A very heartbreaking reason why he did. But that was his last time. From the candidates that we have now, I still keep my lineup of those who won the debate from me, which was Mayor Pete Buttigieg, Andrew Yang, and Amy Klobuchar. However, none of them are front runners, except for in Iowa. Pete Buttigieg is getting up there, which I like, and maybe that's one of those things that turns the corner. And maybe because of Beto going out, his support or his endorsements will go to the people that will be viable for this. But to reiterate, we want we want to get to the point of having a good Democratic candidate, not only to beat Donald Trump, but to be able to reassure the people that we're not flying off to the left immediately or any of that business. That we want to tamp down, back down on the chaos, and go back to, we can't go back, but try to push forward to some type of new normalcy in our political discourse and how we deal with each other. Because, we're in the partisan camps now. We all have our own flags. I was having a conversation on a Facebook group I'm a part of. That it's called Middle America. It's connected to Vin and Sori, which is a great site from YouTube. They do reactions to songs, but they also do political stuff and other things. They're very cool people. Anyone who listens to this who are not affiliated to them, go check them out. They're awesome. And they have this group on Facebook called Middle America, which I am a part of and I'm connected to there. The political group is diverse in terms of the politics, which is actually very awesome. Clearly, I am centered to the left, and there's certain people who are left and a little bit beyond that, and the rest are center right and beyond that. You have Trump supporters, never Trumpers, me who needles everybody. But when I was in this conversation, and we brought up the echo chamber, it's like, no, this is not an echo chamber, because if it was an echo chamber, there would only be one political view, and everyone else would be shades of the same view, but it would be only that, and everyone would be in agreement, and if anyone had an opposing agreement, they would destroy them from there, and they'd disparage them to the point where they're gone. That's not what this group is. And that's the type of thing that I wish if we were going to go back to something, we'd go back to the place that we were all just Americans back and forth. And, whatever our politics was, we kept that close to the vest. And, we don't fly our freak flags as eager as we do. The problem with our politics in our interactions these days is that, we are this partisan, polarized camps and tribes. And we don't try to seek each other out for compromise. And that's a shame. It gets frustrating when you deal with people who try to come at you from their point of view, but their point of view is a view of absolute certainty. That they don't want to even have any room for an opposing viewpoint. Just for the one split second thought of like, what, let me understand where you're coming from. And whatever you're right or wrong, we can discuss it, we can debate it. But in the end, even if you don't agree with what I agree with, or I don't agree with what you agree with, we're still good. And we just go our separate ways and we just talk about something else. We don't do that anymore. And that is a shame. And what the worry is for me, especially this coming election, that my candidates who are flying their freak flag going too far to the left, you're not going to get the people in the center. You're not going to get those people, even if they don't like Trump. They don't like him at all. If they could be independents, they could be Republicans who are like, what the hell happened to my party? And why is my party being sycophants to this piece of shit? But individual people have their own set of core values. And I know it kind of blurs and disappears when you see like political figures that you're supposed to revere, or at least they're trying to garner your vote for, because they're trying to mimic your values. but they turn into sycophants and debase themselves in order to defend this guy because they're fearful of his base, that they might lose their own personal elections if they anger his supporters. I said this. It may not have been even one of these videos that I've done on YouTube, but I did say that I remember thinking back in the 2016 election when there were so many Republicans and there was Donald Trump, and none of them, half of them didn't want to engage with him, the other half wanted to hug him because they wanted so badly to make sure that when he falls, they take his supporters from him. But the thing is that I know there's a segment of the Republican Party that could not stand the guy, but the one thing they could not stand more is no one fighting him. That no one stood up for their values. And you know what, Donnie? No, that's not what I believe in. That's not what the people that voted me into the Senate or to the Congress or whatever believe in. And you're flashy, your hand vibrating and all that nonsense. But in the end of the day, you do not share the core values of the Republican Party. And I will fight you. None of that happened. You had half-hearted attempts from Jeb Bush and a few others, but they were too wrapped up into the controlled, like the control sphere in order to not clamp their boot down on him. I mean, Marco Rubio and him trying to last-ditch effort to use the hands. Oh, that type of smear only works if you put your heart into it. But if you're not too used to doing it, then it's like a comedian who feels like in order to get the audience that they want, they have to become a shock comedian and say some disgusting shit to garner a laugh. But the problem is they're not used to it. So when they say it falls flat, well, Marco Rubio's bullshit fell flat. And now look at him now. Now he's just a sycophant for Trump like anybody else. So there were people in the Republican Party who had to vote for Trump, not for the fact that because Hillary was there and, she is the Antichrist, I guess, but because they were ashamed of all the other Republican candidates that could not fight for their values against this carnival barker. And they lessered the two evils from their point of view when they went for the disqualified, unqualified, barely literate 70-year-old man-child. You're not going to get these people from that. After 2 or 3 years of what they had to deal with in order to be his supporter, to be nothing like the people who were at the rallies. But, they were like the silent ones who voted for them, who never took any polls, that never answered any phones suggesting that they would go one way or the other. But you're not going to win these people who are center-right by going far left. The only way that you're going to push successfully policies that are considered left is that you get your country going moderate, to get yourself back to the center. So anything left can seem reasonable. Anything right can also seem reasonable. And you can compromise. And then one angle and both angles could have their own versions of progress, which connects all of us from Democrat to Republican, liberal, conservative, etc. Because all this all or nothing crap is the same thing that keeps us divided. And that's why there won't be any progress. That's why procedures involving impeachment, it's just so scandalous and so dramatic, because we have to make our stand in front of the camera, when you don't have to. And that's probably kind of a rant on that. My Democrats need to, speak, because I know it's in primary season. Fine, speak the left wing jargon. Fine, keep yourself keep yourself grounded. Keep yourself grounded to the center. Even if it's just starting with the center of the Democratic Party, just don't look like a wingnut. Don't look like you're flaming. So there's that topic. But kind of alluded to what's going on with the impeachment in the past few weeks that we've saw. All of this is theater. It is. From the right and to the left, this is all just theater. And bad theater, too. Because we don't want to go and actually ask the questions here. You get a whole bunch of Republicans appear and try to storm the way into the skiff with camera phones, saying that, it's no transparency, they're being shut out, there's no representation, there isn't a vote. Why isn't there a vote? Let's start with the transparency. I said this last time. 47 Republicans were involved in those 3 committees. There were Republicans there, or could have been there, that can ask questions to witnesses, that can take testimony, and see evidence. No one was being shut out. But here's the funny part. Of those people that were doing their protest, 12 of them were able to actually go in there, that were part of those committees. And they weren't in there because they wanted to be outside pretending that they could not go in. One of them, in an article that I read, admitted to not being in one of those committee meetings. Not because he was shut out, because he didn't want to be there. He didn't want to be there, so he can be outside claiming that he wasn't able to go in, or there was no transparency, or he was shut out when he was allowed in and he just chose not to. He made the choice for politics. Politics to go after the process of this impeachment inquiry. They demand the vote. We can't do this without a vote. Well, why is all these closed doors meetings without the vote? Why are these closed doors meetings? That's not right. That's not un-American. How dare they? Trey Gowdy, during the Benghazi hearings, had plenty of closed door meetings that he kept Democrats out. It's amazing the short-term memory span that people have when it comes to this. And you see this in like almost every issue on there, where when it comes to impeachment, how people are so anti-impeachment now on the basis of the process. But when it was Clinton being impeached and they were doing the impeaching, they were perfectly fine with it. When they talked about how any president, and this is Lindsey Graham who was saying this, how if any president chose to ignore a subpoena, then they are subject to an impeachment inquiry. They're subject to it. But now, when the shoe is on the other foot, and it's Donald Trump, all of a sudden it's okay for him to ignore subpoenas all they want because the same process, the same rules that you were using. That's the other portion of this, how they argue over the rules. But dare the rules. Why is your rule so unfair to us in the minority? Because they were the same rules that you were using when the Democrats were in the minority. And that worked out just fine for you. But when now you're in the minority, then we can't have those rules now, can we? So look yourself in the mirror about that. Bear with me, I'm like going back days and days looking for something specific. So I am just going to keep rattling on what I was talking about. I even remember what I was talking about. I'm getting old. 41 now. So, but they demand the vote. They demand that we have this vote. And I'm telling people that, a few weeks ago, the Democrats secured the 218 to vote for impeachment. To at least go through the process of the impeachment inquiry. They had the 218. They had the majority. So you finally get them to do the vote. You're pulling them, kicking and screaming for them to do the vote. I don't know what you were going for, but the vote was 232 to what, 196? In favor of processes of the impeachment inquiry? Now what? Now what are you going to bitch and moan about? The Republicans came out and did this melodramatic, this is the Soviet impeachment. This is a Soviet-style impeachment. It had lovely little graphs and charts all set up that says this. It was just amazing how much skill they had with this. If this was an actual Soviet-style impeachment, that would involve bullets, that would involve dead bodies, and the only thing you would hear about on the news is the glorious new opening of a tractor factory. There's no transparency. Why are we hearing about this every single day? There's no transparency. You do get this just anger of the hypocrisy of this. And I understand that people think it's about hypocrisy one way or the other way, and that's fine. Some people want to go after certain members of the Congress for what they consider ethnic violations. Fine, do that. If they did something wrong, fine, fuck them. If it's Adam Schiff or whatever, if they violated something, then fine, go after them. And if it's proven wrong, gone. No one should be afraid of investigations. Then again, no one should run from subpoenas either. So who's the one that's fearful here? So I was saying, Trey Gowdy ran his Benghazi investigation, and he had closed-door meetings. He did the exact same. He had the exact same rules as the Democrats do now. And the Democrats didn't like it, but still, it was legal. There was nothing wrong with it. There was nothing really improper about it, other than being, I guess, in bad form or bad taste. Democrats do this, all of a sudden, this is a travesty. This is a miscarriage of justice. Whatever melodrama you want to say. It's funny how Judge Andrew Napolitano from Fox News, who is becoming more and more somebody who has to say his piece outside of the actual Fox News studio. Have you noticed some of those videos where he's outside? And he's just worried about, Hannity sniping him or something. He says, even he goes and tries to tell the Fox and Friends morning crew that is trying to prod him into saying that all these closed-door meetings are wrong. He says, no, they're not wrong. You might not like it, but they're doing nothing wrong with that. And here you go, though. You now had your vote. You now had the vote for 232 to 119 to 196 to continue with the processes of the impeachment inquiry, which includes open door meetings. We're going to have open cameras. We're going to have the classic impeachment hearings that we started to see in the Nixon administration before he resigned and the Clinton administration. We'll have them on TV. We'll get to see them. Happy? And of course, I'm realistic. So I know that even if they manage to get the impeachment vote in through the House, the Senate, it still will get killed. You've seen my videos, you know that I've always taken this into account. I still say it's the right thing to do. I also say that the presidential candidates on the Democratic side and the Republican side, because there are 3 opposing Republicans opposing Trump: Bill Weld, Joe Walsh, and Mark Sanford. Both sides. I've said this before, I'll say it again. I want them to stop talking about impeachment. I don't want them to give their opinion on impeachment. I want them to say, whoever's going to be the nominee, is that is a congressional matter, that the process that they're going through. I wish them well with that. But for me, as a presidential candidate, I don't want to see Donald Trump impeached. I want to beat him at the polls. I want to beat him with the will of the American people. Presidential candidates should say that. And they should. I think that would garner more positive, passionate feeling. But I don't know. That's another one of these things I'm kind of hazy on when it comes to my side of the aisle with this. But again, I bring this up. I brought this up last time. All this argument, all this melodrama, all this theater from Republicans talking about the process, talking about, them being shut out when they're not being shut out, them not being able to get involved in this when they totally are capable of getting involved in this, saying that the whole thing is improper, all this nonsense. You know what they're not arguing? They're not arguing the testimony. They're not. They're not refuting anything, and it's not a matter of them not being there to do so because Republicans are on these committees and they certainly could try. But no one's refuting the testimony of Fiona Hill. No one is really refuting the testimony of Sondland, who was the Trump booster that became his envoy to the European Union, but still somehow managed to get involved in Ukraine, even though Ukraine is not in the European Union. I'm trying to figure that one out. The ambassador to Ukraine that Trump so desperately wanted forced out of her position, she testified. No one refuted her testimony. Bill Taylor, whose devastating testimony got people so shaken that no one wanted to answer questions of reporters when they went by because they knew the quid pro quo was no longer a myth. It was no longer something they could just argue away straight away. Kurt Volker, who was also the envoy, testified, supported the whistleblower claims. Again, his testimony wasn't refuted. And then Alexander Vindman was a lieutenant colonel who won a Purple Heart for his being wounded from a roadside bomb in Iraq. He came as an immigrant. His family came with the clothing on their back and about $750. His family is now living what was the traditional American dream of coming to this country and making something for themselves. He went to military. His kids are in the military. He was connected to the White House. He was listening in on Ukrainian call. And before we even heard a word of his testimony, Fox News did its damnedest to try to disparage him, try to minimize how much of a war hero he was, try to say that he was double dealing, that he had a dual loyalty to Ukraine, when he hasn't been, when he left Ukraine when he was 3. Oh yeah, they did their damnedest. But it turned out that because of their sleazy and slimy attempts to disparage this man, even Republicans had to stand up for him and in his word, in his honor. Liz Cheney shut down that bullshit. Now, knowing me and my politics, for those who know me, I don't say this lightly, and I would not say this much at all. This is probably a singular moment. But I will thank a Cheney. I will thank the daughter of Dick Cheney. Thank you, Liz Cheney, for being an upstanding American, defending an American and his word and the patriotism that he showed for this country that he served. And he testifies. He was on the phone on the Ukrainian call. From his testimony, he had noticed that there were certain words that were taken out of the transcript that he tried to put back in, but was unable to before it was posted for the world to see. This perfect call, this perfect transcript, that there was no quid pro quo. Now, every one of these people that testified said indeed there were so many little situations that happened involving, even before the Ukrainian call, that certain conditions had to be made, including making a public statement of Ukraine is going to investigate the Bidens before they even get the call for Zelensky to Trump. Not to mention the aid that got withheld. All these people who've testified are under oath. So, are you going to now say that they're all lying? Mm-hmm. I mean, maybe. But that is what? 4 names that testified? Many of which did in defiance of the White House that wanted them not to testify at all. Again, who is fearful of investigations? Who is trying to block people from testifying? On whose side is ignoring subpoenas? Who is coming up with executive privileges even after they leave the White House? Privileges that do not exist. Somebody who's scared, whose allies are scared for them. Because apparently it's not just his, if he happens to go down, the people around him must be connected by their livelihoods to him. Because, if he doesn't turn dictator, what are these people going to do when he actually does leave office? If he actually does win this election and does the full 8, what are they going to do? Because politically, they're going to have nowhere to go. No one is going to hire them. And they're hitched to him. It is an interesting thing when Trump gets involved in something, everyone around him has to be involved with it, to the point where if he goes down, they all go down. So maybe it's not loyalty that they feel for this man. Maybe it's their personal livelihoods are being threatened because of his actions. That's very mafia, isn't it? I go down, you go down. You have just as much dirt on your hands as I do. Maybe it's a different flavor of shit on there, but I go down, you go down. This thing you want to praise, you want to defend, you want to give him the benefit of the doubt, you want to disparage any investigation against him. You will not look at the myriad of things that goes on here and abroad. Well, this is not ending. And we will continue this discussion because there's so much to talk about. I mean, we got these two topics that I just did, which I'm closing up this video now over. We're going to talk about Baghdadi. We're going to talk more about the investigations. We'll talk about wildfires. We'll talk about, how the callous nature of just like, let California suffer. How certain people go on Fox News and say they're suffering from wildfires because of wokeness. Jesus Christ, people. All right. Enough of this for now. But I will be back. The Ranter rants because his urge to rant is rising. And I'm back. And there will be more to come. See you later.